London dentists gross pound 400,000 annually, but rank only 10th in actual wealth among high-income professionals. The same trap hits US physicians, attorneys, and accountants across every developed economy. And in the next 9 minutes, I'll show you the exact overhead numbers that compress six-figure gross revenue into middle-class net take-home, then explain why this forces a 5 to 10-year career extension most professionals never see coming. Here's what matters now. The IRS audit rate for self-employed professionals earning over pound 200,000 remains elevated at 0.4 to 0.6% of filings. Practice acquisition costs climb 8 to 12% annually. And retirement contribution calculations based on gross revenue, not net profit, are costing high-income professionals tens of thousands in compounded savings gaps. By minute 7, I'll show you the one Schedule C line item that most dentists underestimate, and the recalculation that reveals your actual retirement runway. Let's start with a pattern interrupt. A dentist in London grosses pound 300,000. Sounds wealthy. Sounds six-figure income. Sounds retirement-ready. But here's where the data diverges from the story. According to the American Dental Association Practice Trends Survey 2023 data, the average dental practice allocates 25 to 35% of gross revenue to hygienists' salaries, dental assistants, and front office staff. For pound 300,000 practice, that's pound 75,000 to pound 105,000 in payroll alone before benefits. Add employer payroll taxes at approximately 3% in the US or the UK equivalent national insurance at 8%, and that hygienist salary line alone consumes another pound 10,000 to pound 16,000. But staff is only the first hit. Equipment depreciation, leasing, and maintenance cost the average dental practice between 5 and 8% of revenue annually. That's pound 15,000 to pound 24,000 per year on a pound 300,000 practice. The ADA survey from 2022 to 2023 confirms that practices using lease-to-own equipment models see effective costs at the higher end, often 8 to 10% of revenue when you factor in replacement cycles and repair reserves. Next, malpractice insurance. The ADA reports that dental malpractice premiums in the UK and US range from pound 8,000 to pound 15,000 annually for a general practice. Specialists often pay pound 20,000 or higher. That's a fixed cost that doesn't scale with revenue. Then licensing, continuing education, and regulatory compliance. The UK General Dental Council annual registration fee is approximately pound 576. In the US, dental licensing and state board fees range from pound 500 to pound 2,000 per state annually. Continuing education mandates add another pound 1,000 to pound 3,000 per year depending on jurisdiction. That's conservatively pound 2,000 to pound 5,000 annually in compliance overhead. Facility costs, rent, utilities, waste disposal, sterilization, infection control protocols typically run 10 to 12% of revenue for a leased practice. For a pound 300,000 practice, that's pound 30,000 to pound 36,000 annually. Now let's add these up. Staff pound 85,000 to pound 121,000 including payroll tax. Equipment pound 15,000 to pound 24,000. Malpractice insurance pound 8,000 to pound 15,000. Compliance and education pound 2,000 to pound 5,000. Facility pound 30,000 to pound 36,000. That's a total of pound 140,000 to pound 201,000 in overhead on a pound 300,000 gross practice. That leaves net profit of pound 99,000 to pound 160,000 or 33 to 53% of gross revenue. Take the middle of that range, pound 130,000 net. But wait, there's more. Schedule C filers also pay self-employment tax. In the US, self-employed individuals pay 3% on 35% of net earnings. On pound 130,000 net, that's approximately pound 18,200 in self-employment tax. In the UK, national insurance contributions for self-employed individuals add roughly 9% on profits above the primary threshold, approximately pound 12,570. That's another pound 10,600. After self-employment tax, the pound 300,000 gross practice nets to approximately pound 111,800 US model or pound 119,400 UK model. Then add income tax. In the US, pound 119,000 in net self-employment income puts you in the 24 to 32% federal bracket plus state tax. Total tax drag 35 to 40% of net. That leaves take-home of approximately pound 71,000 to pound 77,000 annually. Before student loan repayment, before mortgage, before living expenses. Now compare that to a W-2 employed physician or dental associate earning pound 180,000 gross salary. After payroll taxes, approximately 25 to 30% combined federal, state, and payroll taxes, that physician nets approximately pound 126,000 to pound 135,000. The W-2 employee has fewer taxes due to employer benefits. No equipment liability, no staff HR burden, and guaranteed payroll security. Here's the delta. The practice owner grosses pound 300,000 but nets pound 71,000 to pound 77,000. The employed associate grosses pound 180,000 but nets pound 126,000 to pound 135,000. The practice owner has pound 120,000 plus higher gross revenue but takes home pound 50,000 to pound 60,000 asterisk less asterisk annually than the employed peer. This is the overhead destroyer in motion. The research shows this pattern across all self-employed high-income professions. A 2023 Tax Foundation analysis on self-employment tax drag found that solo practitioners pay 25 to 35% more in total tax as a percentage of net income compared to W-2 equivalents earning similar net amounts. The IRS Statistics of Income 2022 tax year, released 2024, confirms that average net profit margin for dental practices filing Schedule C is 35 to 45% of gross revenue, significantly lower than most professionals assume when evaluating practice acquisition. Why does this matter now? Because practice acquisition costs in the US and UK have climbed 8 to 12% annually over the past 3 years. A dental practice valued at £500,000 5 years ago now costs £700,000 to £800,000. Financing that acquisition at 5 to 5% interest adds another £45,000 to £60,000 in annual debt service. A practice owner who projected retirement savings based on £300,000 gross revenue suddenly realizes that after overhead and debt service, they're saving £15,000 to £25,000 annually, instead of the £80,000 to £100,000 they projected. That savings gap compounds. Across a 30-year career, underestimating annual retirement contribution by £55,000 to £75,000 means underfunding retirement by £1.65 million to £2.25 million before investment growth. That forces a 5 to 10-year career extension, working into your early 70s instead of retiring at 60 or 62. The research also shows that high-income professionals misclassify gross revenue as income. The Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances, 2022 WAVE, found that 43% of self-employed professionals earning over £200,000 gross overestimated their actual take-home by 35 to 50% when planning retirement contributions. They confused billings with savings capacity. Here's the recalibration you need. Take your gross practice revenue. Subtract overhead at 55 to 65% of gross. That's your net profit. Subtract self-employment tax at 13 to 15% of net. Subtract income tax at 32 to 40% of net. Whatever remains is your actual take-home and your realistic retirement savings capacity. Most practice owners discover their actual take-home is 25 to 35% of gross revenue, not the 50 to 60% they assumed. For £300,000 practice, that's £75,000 to £105,000 in actual take-home, equivalent to a W-2 salary of £100,000 to £140,000 before the tax advantage of employer contributions and benefits. If you're considering practice ownership or evaluating a partnership acquisition, stress test the overhead model against this reality. One more layer, the unlimited liability exposure. A practice owner carries malpractice and employment liability that a W-2 employee doesn't. That liability is uninsured beyond the policy limit, often £5 million to £10 million. A single adverse judgment exceeding insurance coverage can wipe out decades of savings. A W-2 employee's liability ends at the employer's policy. So when you're comparing a £300,000 practice owner to a £180,000 W-2 employed peer, you're not comparing equal risk profiles. The practice owner has higher gross income but lower net take-home, higher tax drag, higher liability exposure, and zero employer benefits, and takes home less than the W-2 peer in many cases. The Data Fortune research reveals this pattern across London, New York, San Francisco, Sydney, and every high-cost city where practice acquisition is normalized among high-income professionals. The overhead trap is real. Gross revenue is the illusion. Net profit is the reality. If you want the full numbers and the IRS Schedule C implementation checklist, the deep version with every calculation and source is in the companion book, Top 1% Net Worth. Link in the description. Here's the takeaway. Don't confuse gross billings with what you actually take home and can save. Recalculate your retirement runway based on net income, not gross revenue. And if practice ownership is on your radar, run these overhead numbers before acquisition. The difference between six-figure gross and six-figure net income could cost you a decade of your career. If this recalibrated your view on practice economics or high-income professional wealth,